Hi guys, this is Andrew with rockclass101.com and welcome to live lesson episode number. So I wanted to let you guys know that every second Monday of the month at 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to be live streaming a lesson over at rockclass101.com. Now these live lessons are going to be hosted by Matt Dahlberg, and each month the topic will be different. So what's fun about the live lessons is that you're not only able to watch live, but you're also able to chat live. So you'll be able to chat with Matt and other Rock Class 101 members. So for more information on how to tune in, click this link right here or go to the site rockclass101.com and do a search for live lessons. Now on that page you'll also be able to watch every live lesson that we've done before. So if you've ever missed one, no worries, they're all there. Now, if you can't make the live stream, don't sweat it, because the day after the broadcast, we'll be publishing it to our YouTube channel. And to go one step further, on the first Monday of the month, which is 1 week before the broadcast, we're going to have a forum post up on the site, which will cover two things. Number one, what the topic for the month's live lesson will be about. And number two, you'll be able to post your questions ahead of time. So that's great news because you're still going to be able to participate. Now to post on our forum, all you have to do is sign up for basic membership, which is 100% free, and that will gain you the ability to post on our forums. All right, guys, so I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Matt to teach this month's lesson, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Today we're going to work on 3 different variations of the triplet strum. And honestly, I think this is one of the most important techniques there is on the ukulele because of how unique it is to the instrument. I've seen some triplet guitar stuff, and I know it exists, but it's much less common than it is on the ukulele. For the ukulele, it's kind of considered like a core technique. And what's fun about it is there are a variety of variations, a number of variations that we can use for this technique. Today we're going to work on 3 different types, and really I only use regularly 2 of these types, so that kind of tells you how much flexibility there is. And it might be that you've learned a different way of doing the triplet in the past that's, variation of these, and that's fine. That's what's cool about the technique. The better you are, though, the easier you're going to be able to pick up new triplets, and the more different ways you can do triplet strum, the better player you'll become. So well, let's go ahead and start with the first triplet. And this was actually the first way I learned how to triplet, and it ended up not being the one that I liked the most. And so for this first triplet strum, we're going to play, we'll play an A chord. So we're going to take on your fretting hand, your middle finger placed on the 2nd fret of the G string, and your index finger placed on the 1st fret of the C string. This has a nice kind of almost flamenco vibe to it to me, so I like to do it when I'm practicing my triplets. And what we're going to practice with the actual triplet strum is we're going to start here by using our index finger and strumming down, just as we would a normal down strum. And when I do this down strum, I'm bringing my hand completely down as I do it. So you'll notice that all the fingers are below the strings. So this is the first motion. The second motion now is I'm going to take my thumb and I'm going to come up over the strings by itself. But I'm going to not come completely over the strings with the hand like I did on the down. I'm only going to bring the thumb up, leaving the index finger down below. So we have 1 and then 2, and now we need one more motion for a triplet strum. So that's going to be the index finger coming up over the strings. And as the index finger comes up, completing that third motion, you'll notice your hand is right back to where it started. So if I do this really, really slow and do it a few times in a row, it should look and sound something like this. Down with the index, right? Up with the thumb, up with the index. Down with the index, up with the thumb, up with the index. Down with the index, up with the thumb, up with the index. Down with the index, up with the thumb, up with the index. Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. You'll notice it kind of feels like doing this, type of motion. If you haven't done it before, it feels a little bit awkward at first. And it's really important just to get those motions very consistent. One of the most important things about this technique, and it's not just for this version of the triplet strum, but really all 3 of the versions that we're going to talk about here today, is you want to be very efficient with your finger movements. So in the case of this strum, if you do it like this, see how much movement I'm making extra, then it's going to be impossible to build up speed because I'm doing too much to make it happen faster. So it's really critical that even when you're practicing at slow speeds, every single motion that you make is very methodical and very purposeful, right? So when I practice this slow, I want to do something like this. I want to go, okay, down with the whole hand. All right, now I'm going to come up with the thumb, halfway, and then up with the index. And if I accidentally do something like this, where I go down with the index, oops, I should have done the full motion, I'm going to want to kind of reset so that I can develop the correct method with it. Down with the whole hand, up with the thumb. Oops, I came up with the index too. That's not quite right. So let's go ahead and reset from that point. Up with the thumb, leaving the index down, then come up, right? So it's really methodical as you're doing this. Now, what I like about this triplet strum is it has your hand sort of moving in this direction where you're kind of, coming down with the index over here and then kind of coming up with the thumb and up with the index a little bit more over the sound hole. And by doing that, you'll see that it's almost more like a train. You know how a train wheel moves, right? Going like this in the kind of circular motion, create that chugga 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 chugga, right? It's that same sort of look to it with the hand, right? And it sounds pretty good. Pretty cool. Now, that is my least favorite of these methods, actually, funny enough, right? And the reason is just because my hand isn't as comfortable moving with the double up strums. I just, it's harder for me. Now, it's one that I still think is worthwhile practicing. If it's easier for you, that's awesome. Keep working with it. But for me, the one that came more naturally involved more down strums. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to kind of flip what we were just doing on its axis a little bit. So we're going to start with the same thing. We're still going to play that A chord, and we're still going to do a down strum with our index, but I'm going to, instead of bringing my hand completely down like I did with the first triplet strum, I'm going to make a little bit of a half motion. So I'm going to bring my finger down, and I'm going to leave my thumb up above the strings. So it's sort of this half strum. You're strumming completely across the strings, but your hand is not moving all the way down. And the reason for this is after I've done this down strum, my thumb is then going to do the second strum motion coming down. So we have index down, leaving the thumb up, and the thumb down. And as the thumb comes down, the two fingers, the index and the thumb, kind of meet together, similar to if someone's like handing you a business card or a guitar pick or something, very lightly pressing them together. So the first motion and then second motion. Now, after you've done the second motion, my favorite part of it, which is also the tricky part, is the final motion, because you're going to use your thumb and the nail of your thumb to actually come up over the strings. And so when you do this, it's okay for your wrist to pop out just a little bit so that you can get a nice angle with the thumbnail. If you're coming up like this, it's going to be a very brittle sound, but if you're a little bit more perpendicular, it's going to be a more dominant, more pronounced sound. And then what that does is it sets you right back up for the triplet, right? So if I do my first down, leaving the thumb up, second down, meet them together, and then up, bringing the thumbnail up, and then I can repeat down, down, up, down, down, up, down, down, up. The thing most people struggle with this technique at first is the thumbnail, getting a good tone coming on that up strum. And it's a good thing to practice because those ups with the thumb can be a really nice dynamic movement that you can make outside of just the triplets. It just sounds really good to get that really, really, in your face tone. And I like that with my triplets. So that's why I tended to prefer this method. And so when we're practicing this, if you got comfortable with the first one and then you try doing this one, you notice it's like, okay, I can do this. And now it's like, oh God, I gotta do this. Wait, what? It's really hard to go back and forth between these different methods. And that's actually the best exercise you can do with this. And what I recommend the highest is just try these out, build up a little bit of speed, try the other one, keeps you a little bit fresh. But let's go ahead and try this second method again. And I'm going to talk about a couple more tips as we go through. So still with that A chord, we're going to do the half strum down with the index and half strum, still struck all four strings. I'm just leaving my thumb up. then my thumb comes down, meet the two fingers together, pop the wrist out just a little bit, come up with the thumbnail over the strings. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And remember the little circular motion I was mentioning before with the previous one? Well, there's one in this one too, and it's sort of this going down, around, and up. And it really creates this circular, again, the train-like movement that can make this strum pattern much easier to practice. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And that's just very gradually building up the speed. Something like that, right? Really cool sound. Now, for the count on this right now, we want to be thinking of these as triplets, which means we count 1, 2, 3. And a really critical thing is that you want to make sure that the distance between the 3 and the 1 is the same as any other. So what that means is the 1 to the 2 is the same as the 2 to the 3, and the 3 to the 1 is the same as all that. It's a tongue twister. All that's trying to say is the distance between each strum when you're rotating it is the same. So this is right. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. This would be wrong. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. See how I have this distance now? I do 1, 2, 3, and then there's this pause before I go back into the 1. When I first started working on this technique, that's actually what I did, and that's a big time no-no. You want to make sure that you have that consistency moving, and that's where the circular motion can really help make sure that you're getting a good tone and good consistent feel, because normally when we strum an ukulele, we go down and then we come back up, and that is a very 1-2 relationship, right? Well, now we have either 2 downs, like the second method we worked on, or 2 ups that are taking place within 1 down and up beat, right? Because now we have a triplet where there used to be only 2. So making it circular can help us internalize that feel to make sure that we're getting good, consistent time. It's a doozy, but it's really fun when you start to build up speed. Zill actually said in the chat, super awkward to do it a different way than usual. And I totally agree. And that's why it's really good to do it, because the more you're able to be flexible with how you approach these sort of techniques, the more sort of, plastic your learning is. Sort of like, kids can learn things so quickly, and we want to try to emulate that same sort of thing. So by doing variations, it can really help with that. So we've got now that second movement, which is the down with the index, down with the thumb, and then up with the thumb, right? So just to go back a moment, the first motion was down with the index, bring the hand completely down, up with the thumb, up with the index. So variation 1 was 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Variation 2 was down, down, up, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. A little thing that you'll notice is that up strum with the thumb tends to be pretty pronounced. So if you do the first one, there tends to be a little bit more of an emphasis on the 2, the sort of 1, 2, 3, 1, right? Where we get that 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, because the thumbnail is just a little more dominant in its sound. The second way, the 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, creates a little bit more on the 3. So they have very slight different textures despite being the same sort of rhythm. So let's talk about the third way. The third way is kind of cheating in terms of it's very similar to the second way, but it's also used in a completely different environment, and it's my favorite of these. So I use the second way the most, but the third way is my favorite. And the reason is because this is a method to use the triplet strum to create real intensity with what we're trying to play. We're trying to work on creating this almost flamenco type of sound and just get in-your-face volume with the third triplet strum. Now, it doesn't have to be played with flamenco style music. You can use it really anywhere, but it can allow you to build more power. So the way that we do this is we forget about this finger. We forget about the index. We forget about the pinky too. We're not going to use the index or pinky. We're going to use our middle and our ring fingers on the first strum. So we're going to link them together, similar to if you're, making a little wolf or something like that, or a rock out, right? And you're going to use these two fingers as if they're one. And that first strum motion is going to be those two fingers striking all four strings. You'll notice immediately there's more volume that comes from this because we're using the nails of these fingers, so two fingers, and these two fingers are bigger than the index, so it's just going to be more sound that comes out. You'll notice I like to leave my index and pinky a bit straight out just to be out of the way. So the first motion there now are these two fingers. The second motion is going to be the thumb. And the thumb kind of comes down and you can kind of meet them together a little bit. It's not as important as the second variation of like grasping a business card or something, but you want them to meet sort of together. So it's the two fingers down, the thumb follows, and then you're going to bring up with the thumb and you're going to repeat from there. So the motion is exactly the same as the second one, right? It's still a down, down, up. But instead of the index finger being the first one that goes down, you're going to use these two fingers to go on that down. So down with these two fingers, down with the thumb, up with the thumb, and you should be reset. Now the reason why I like this one so much is it kind of opens up the hand as you're playing it. One of the difficulties with the triplet strum is because it uses the index finger, it feels a lot like normal strumming. So it's very easy to get mixed up when you're doing a triplet strum and normal strumming. It makes it easy to kind of, trip up over yourself in the same way that you would trip up when you're practicing something like a tongue twister, right? She sells seashells by the seashore is difficult because sea and shells and she and sells all are so similar to one another. So it'd be much easier to say Lucy sells, clam shells by the ocean shore. That would be much easier to say because it's a variation on each one of those words. It's not actually saying, things are so close together. So now the index being dropped and the middle and ring fingers being introduced might make it more difficult at first because it's new, but it makes it much easier over time to do quickly because now you have a different feel for it. You have these two fingers going down instead of the thumb. So we're going down with these two fingers. We're then coming through with the thumb. And when I do that through with the thumb, I kind of bring my hand back just a little bit and then come up with the thumbnail to complete that sort of triplet motion. You'll notice that's what sort of creates the circular motion too. You can see that my hand is moving almost like it's tracing a circle around the ukulele. If you're having trouble with the circular motion, something that can help is kind of moving your wrist, popping it up and down a little bit as you're doing this. Because when the up strum takes place, the wrist kind of comes up a bit to facilitate that, right? Now, it's really important with this technique, if you want to build up very good speed, to use these combination of fingers in this way. Zill asks, can you come up with the index instead of the thumb? So do something like this, and then up with the index. And while, yes, you could, it's not going to allow you to build as much speed because when you do it this way, you're opening up the hand. You'll notice that these two fingers are just sort of sitting out there. And if you incorporate the index finger back in, you're kind of adding more motions, more opportunities to mess up. So again, with the triplet strum, there are a lot of different ways to do it. So you can try it with that index. If it works for you, that's awesome. But I really recommend working it this way. This third way, I think, is much harder than the first two ways overall. But over time, it becomes much easier. So that's the discouraging thing about it, is at first you might think, oh, I'll never be able to do this. But just those slow, consistent motions. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2. Making sure everything is very consistent. And what's fun about this one is you can really build up a lot of speed with this third method. Because again, the hand becomes very, balanced with it. And this is what I use when I really want to embellish something. So I'm going to play it slow, and I'm going to gradually increase the speed just so that you can hear how cool this third triplet strum can sound. So, and for anyone following at home that wants to try and create the sounds I'm doing, the chord I'm playing after this A chord is called a B flat major 7. It's 3 with the ring finger on the G string, 2 on the C string with the middle finger, and 1 on the E string with the index, leaving the A open. And then the last chord is just taking the same shape and moving it up 2 frets. So it's 5, 4, 3, and 0. creates what's called a C6. But I'm just going to use these 3 chords because I think they sound so cool. So here we go. Nice and slow, you see the bit of a circular motion that I'm creating. And I'm just going to speed it up. Now, I've been doing this technique for about over a decade now, well over a decade. So it takes some practice, but when you get it really fast, it sounds great. That cool flamenco sound. And I can't quite get that with the index. You'll notice the index just lacks a sort of punch, all right, versus the 2 fingers. Another cool little thing, as a note, I might be clipping my microphone here, is when Jake Shimabukuro does the crazy While My Guitar Gently Weeps awesome strum, it's this technique that he uses. And I learned this technique from a YouTube video of him teaching it. And so when he's doing this whole... And he does the really fast part right here. It's just that triplet strum, which is really cool because you can really hear how it's used in a very fast setting. And it's really, really fun. So it takes a lot of practice to build up that speed, but with consistent work, you'll be able to get it. So those are the 3 different variations on the triplet strum. Just to recap, the first one was the down and then up with the thumb, up with the index. Not my favorite, but a lot of people prefer this one. Sounds good. The second one was the index down, then the thumb down, then the thumb coming back up. And then the third one, very similar to the second one, but for more power, is the middle and ring going down, followed by the thumb down, and then the thumb up. So the index isn't even involved with it. Another quick tip with that, you'll notice my index and pinky fingers get kind of lazy as I do it really fast. If you keep them straight out like this, it looks way cooler. So I kind of wish I worked on keeping those fingers straight when I was working on it, because it does look cooler when they're straight out. Can't do it as fast, but it doesn't really matter. So those are our 3 types of triplet strums for the day. So if you have any questions as you're watching this live, feel free to leave them in the comments below. I'm going to start reading through these comments to see what sort of questions you guys have. Let's go ahead and dive into some of the questions. So one thing that Zill said is the second way had Matt's signature thumb strum in it. Not surprised it's your favorite. I do love using the thumb. I find that the thumb really opens up a lot with the ukulele. And so let's keep reading here. Zill's question of can you come up with the index instead of the thumb? We kind of talked about that. You really can. It's just not going to give you as much power with that third way as making sure you use the 2 fingers, thumb, and then thumb coming up. Aline says, wow, big trouble with this third triplet. Yeah, the third one is really weird because these 2 fingers being used is not something that's familiar. So it takes a lot of initial practice, but it does get easier than the index finger triplet to build up speed over lots of time. Let's see. Zill says, geez. Yeah, these are crazy. They look more impressive than they are, too. That's another cool thing about the triplet strum is after a couple months of practicing it, you get pretty good at it overall. As long as you're practicing it every day very consistently. And then people, it's a good, impressive technique. So Zill says, are different ones between 1 and 2 better for different contexts? That's a fantastic question. And yes, but so what I mean by that is, yes, they do have slightly different tones. So if one sounds better for a song, in your opinion, that's better to use for that. And the but it has to sound better to you. So as far as the context of the techniques themselves, they're very similar. And they are both complete motions, meaning they both start and end in the same point, right? The index finger starts here, ready to do a down strum, whether you do option 1 or option 2. And when you do option 1 or option 2, they end in the same place. So they start here and they end here. So it doesn't really matter. It's more to taste. So if you like one for one sound more than another, that's when you'd want to use that. Aline says, when I want to increase the speed, is the movement the same? I use my arm rotation more than the fingers. So that's a great question. It is the same. As far as arm motion, you don't want the elbow and the shoulder to be engaged. You don't want to do this. I know that's a little confusing because I was saying the train motion. I was trying to symbolize the train. The motion is really in the wrist and the forearm, and a lot in the fingers. So when you're working on this, you want to make sure that these fingers are getting really comfortable. In fact, the faster I do it, the less arm motion kind of comes in and the more reliance there is on the fingers to tighten up those motions. So when you're practicing it slow like this and you gradually speed up, you'll notice that you sort of out of necessity have to make less motion with the arm because it's not efficient enough. And how can we build this speed? Can you recommend a practice routine? So my favorite thing to practice with this is find a chord that you like and then just gradually increase the speed until you can't push it anymore. And then stop, and then try to start a little bit faster than that speed you couldn't push it anymore, which sounds very counterproductive. But with the triplet strum, sometimes it's easier as you start to get it to jump in at a very, very high speed rather than just build it up. Now, you want to practice slow, build it up to speed. And when you hit that wall, it's okay to try to jump over the wall, so to speak, because this technique is kind of easy for me to jump in at this fast speed, and it can be more difficult to be doing it this full speed and then slow back down because you get comfortable with the motions to a point where it's sort of like walking and chewing gum at the same time. When you start thinking about it, you start messing up. So I definitely recommend to practice triplet strums, play them very slowly, gradually increase the speed through your practice session. And then after you've done that and you've hit the wall, you can't go any faster, go ahead and stop. And then start as fast as you can and see how it goes. You can kind of rinse and repeat. So Joe says, is the first two strums done in the same note? Maybe I should say same note or same beat. Yes, the first two strums done in the same beat. That's a fantastic question. Both of these are one triplet. And so a triplet is going to be 3 triplet eighth notes in this case. So normally 2 eighth notes equal 1 beat in most pieces of music. And with strumming, those 2 eighth notes are going to be a downstroke and an upstroke. 1 and then we go 2 and 3 and 4 and, right? Each one of those are 1 beat, making up the 2 strums, right? Now what we're doing is we're putting 3 strums in that 1 beat. So 1, 2, 3, and then what you can do for counting is you can do the 1, 2, 3, then say the name of the next beat followed by the 2 and 3. So it goes 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 1 and 2 and that's standard strumming. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2, 3, 2, 2, 3, 3, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3 with the triplet. So you're fitting 3 strums in what normally only has 2, and that's what makes it difficult to do. So Zill says, interesting, can you switch notes in the middle of a triplet? Yes, I'm not doing it. What I mean by that is, yes, you can. You could interrupt a triplet, put in some, eighth notes or 16th notes, and then end with a triplet. But that level of rhythmic subdivision is something that my brain just couldn't handle if I wanted to. So that's one of those things that, some very, very great musicians can do. And I'm sure there's some music that does it out there, but I'm not playing it and I'm not listening to it. So it's something that I'm not really going to do much of. But in theory, you absolutely could. Typically speaking, with the triplets, you're going to be going, with a triplet and out of a triplet. So, some things that you can practice that are really nice is practice 1 beat of standard strumming, which is, if I'm just playing that A chord still, 1 and then do a triplet and do that for the second beat, 1, 2, 3. So it's this sort of 1 and 1, 2, 3, 1 and 1, 2, 3. And if I put on a metronome, click, 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 right? You can hear that sort of sound. And if you swing, they just fit together so well. And the reason is because swing, not to go into a swing lesson here, but swing is basically triplets, where the distance between the down and the up is 2. So 1, 2, 3, and then you go back down. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. That's how a swing is made. So a triplet, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, fits in it really well. So if you're looking for stuff to practice with the triplet, swing strumming can be really, really nice. And so Zill says, what about keeping the same rhythm but switching notes, say F to C? Yeah, so you can switch chords, absolutely. And you can do normal strums and triplet strums. Triplet strum replaces one beat. So if you've got 4 beats, you could do one of them as a triplet, 2 of them as a triplet, 3 of them, or 4 of them. You can go in between. And it doesn't really matter. It just sounds good. Robin says, just did it. It wasn't elegant or anything, but I think I managed it. Try playing an A minor chord and fretting the 3rd fret on the A string on the last strum. Yeah, so you can do like a... I think you're doing something like that. So if you're doing something like that, switching in the middle of a triplet strum works great. The question that I think was asked earlier for strumming is starting a triplet motion and then doing a different strum instead of completing the triplet strum, which is a very different thing. So if the question was to do different notes in the triplets, yeah, that's absolutely a great tool. And you can try switching chords mid-strum. You know, that can sound kind of cool. Yeah, absolutely. It's a really, really fun thing. The rhythm, though, the pattern with the strumming hand remains the same as it goes the whole way, right? And then you can switch with the left hand to taste. Pretty fun. So any other questions? Let me go ahead and look through, make sure that I haven't missed any here. I'm also going to check the rock class website. One question that was in the forum was, how do you keep the rhythm following on a triplet strum? So I think the question there might be, you know, as you finish the triplet, how do you keep it going? And just make sure that when you finish a triplet, you go right in to the next rhythm. A lot of times people get hung up. They do the 3rd motion and then they stop. And so if you're doing a triplet followed by a down up, it should be 1, 2, 3, down up, right? That down needs to take place right after the 3, or it doesn't really work. So make sure you're practicing the relationship coming out of the triplet. Very important. Jonathan says, if you have 1 or 2 triplets in a series of quarter or eighth notes, do you tend to switch to one of these techniques, or would you stick to 3 or 4 finger strumming? So do you mean more in a finger picking type of sense? Because the words 3 or 4 finger strumming has me a little bit confused. I think you might mean 3 or 4 finger picking, in which case it just depends. It just all depends. It depends on what the song's trying to do and what sort of sound I'm wanting. Generally speaking, I'm only going to use the triplet strum when I'm wanting all 4 of my strings to be struck. So if I'm finger picking something and the melody's on the A string and the E string or over different strings, you know, in some way, then I'm going to stick with my 3 or 4 finger picking because it's giving me the sound that I'm looking for. Because it doesn't really sound right to put a triplet there. But at the end of the day, there's really only one thing that matters with everything that we do, and that is, does it sound good? You know, do we like the sound of it? So you can absolutely try it with a song. If it works, awesome. That's all that really matters. Joe says, how would you write out triplet forms on paper? I already forgot the first 2. Yeah, that's a great question too. So the way that I usually do it, so when I'm doing my private lessons or other lessons that I give, I do it something like this. So I'll pull out my handy dandy notebook to show you what this looks like. With standard strumming, I'm going to write it something like this, where a single beat is going to have a down and an up strum like this, right? And then from this point, what I'm really going to do for a triplet is I'm going to write whatever the triplet is and put a 3 above it. So the first triplet was a down, up, up. So I'm going to write that something like this, and it will look like that one there. So you see the down, up, up with the triplet sign above. And then for some extra sort of, you know, information, I can do something like this. So now I've written letters underneath telling me which fingers to use. Down with the index, up with the thumb, up with the index. So that would be the first triplet, for instance. The second triplet strum that we worked on is very similar, but also very different, right? Because the second motion is now a down strum, and it's going to be a down with the thumb. So the second one looks like this, right? Down, up, and that should say thumb. Just a little erase in there. There we go. So those are the two different motions, right, written out. These are kind of eyesores, though. These look complex, and it's because it's a complex technique. There's no easy way to write this. In fact, for my students, when we're working on songs and we write it out, so if I'm working on like the While My Guitar Gently Weeps type thing or something like that, what I'll actually do is really simple. Is I'll do this. T for triplet. The reason is because usually when somebody's working on putting it in a pattern in a combination of something like this, they already know what to do with the triplet. They already have comfort with how the triplet should sound. So just a shorthand T works and it communicates whatever triplet they're comfortable with. So that's how I would do that. So let me go ahead and pull back open chat because I just realized I closed it to take those notes. But see if there are any other questions here. Your guys' questions today have been absolutely awesome. Triplet strums are one of my favorite techniques there is on the ukulele. I just think they sound so good, and I think they're so unique. And so it's fun to talk about and answer questions for. So let me go ahead and pull open chat again real quick here. Put on some Jeopardy music while I'm pulling it open, finding the link. There we go. Make sure any questions in chat. Open live chat. Oops. I'm listening to myself. Good stuff. All right. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to find the chat again. It's taking just a minute here to get the chat. There we go. So it looks like the only other thing that's been posted since we talked about writing out, Zill says, I like the triplet strum together with the triplet picking you taught. Yeah, triplet strumming and triplet picking, you can go kind of between. Those are using like the 3-finger roll and 3-finger tremolo. I'm not sure if I've done those techniques on rock class before. If not, that might be a good live lesson. And so Joe says, going too fast, please hold up the strum pattern again. Yeah, absolutely. So that you can see what that strum pattern looks like. It's something like this. The cool thing about these YouTube videos too is, while this is live, you can pause anytime to look at anything that you might want to see more of. And so here's what those strums look like. The first one is the first one we learned, and the second one is the second one we learned. And then the third one is just the same one, only you could write like R and M for ring and middle, or M and R for middle and ring, to create those sort of sounds. So that's how I like to write them. But again, it's kind of clunky. Triplets are just kind of a clunky thing. So Zill says, I did do that one live. Excellent. I'm glad, because that's one of my favorite techniques. So, well, if there are no other questions, I'll leave you guys here. Triplet strums, again, one of my favorite techniques on the ukulele, and I think one of the most important ones to get really comfortable with. To be completely honest, it's one of those things that you can really tell if they're an ukulele player, is their triplet strum, at least, from the standpoint of the high G, super fast Jake Shimabukuro style playing. Triplet strums are so integral. And so I never played guitar really. I started on ukulele, and so I was learning these right away, and that's why I'm comfortable with them now. And so keep it up, and you'll get it just as fast, if not faster than I will, with practice. So thank you guys so much for coming. I appreciate you all. It's been a lot of fun doing these live lessons here on Rock Class, as well as the different lessons that I've been doing, tutorials. I will say that one of the new lessons is a song called Loki Lani, which is a traditional Hawaiian song that uses the triplet strum, and that's one of the reasons why we're doing this here today. So check that out. It should be available soon. If you're watching this recorded, it's probably already available. Thank you guys so much. Take it easy and have a wonderful week. See ya.